this is the first time I'm noticing this, but the lights inside of Square 1682, they're big gigantic teardrops or raindrops, and I hadn't noticed this before for some reason, or if I did, my brain just didn't feel like paying that much attention. So right, so I'm wondering if the camera will pick it up, but big glass, you know, raindrop shaped at Pal Omar, like marring your pal. It's like, you know, to mar someone, to, you know, you get it. So speaking of, and I'm walking east here on Sansom from 17th Street. Speaking of, there's a term that went around for a while, like a meme. It's kind of quieted down, but it's a Karen. It would be like, say, in general, like a seemingly overprivileged or a self-entitled white female flips out, you know, or has a certain attitude towards, say, people in low-wage jobs, you know, whether they be like retail stores, or this could happen anywhere, like someone flips out and has a certain attitude. In some cases, women are called this, and I've wondered if they were provoked, and they normally wouldn't be like that, you know, so it could be looked at a million different ways. My latest issue is I saw someone on YouTube using the word Karen in response to people who are technically sticking up for homes that are being raided for the immigrant ICE situation. And I was like, well, the women are technically protester in nature. Like, they're not really Karens because they're technically sticking up for people who have no voice and who aren't as privileged per se. Like, they're, you know, sticking up for people who are vulnerable. So like is kind of opposite of how I see a Karen, you know. But the idea is the women are complaining about ICE and their tactics. So anyway, I usually don't talk about stuff like this on my channel, but I started to wonder, like, what would a male version, like, what would you call a man who was like a Karen? Would you, so I looked it up. I'm like, say there's a man who is similar to a Karen. We're always picking on women, right? We never pick on men who do the same thing that a Karen might do. So I was like, I looked it up. The only thing I could find is Terry, T-E-R-R-Y. Oddly, I only know women who are named Terry, although there might have been one guy in my entire 54-year history named Terry. So I was like, maybe she was supposed to do that. Okay. So anyway, and in some cases a person has a right to like have an issue, and they might be low wage themselves and they just flip out on people because they're provoked heavily. But anyway, but it's like, why are women always picked on and men aren't, in such a public way, in such a derogatory way, in such a way that assumes something about that person that may not be true? It's like in the heat of the moment, you know what I mean? So anyway, just putting it out there. So I'm tired of the word Karen. I thought it was dead and gone, that term, you know, meme or whatever. But apparently there are people who just picked up on it recently. And I was thinking, like, the person I'm thinking of who seems hardworking, but he technically isn't using the term perfectly. Like, it's not in the right situation. So anyway, he might see it more general, like just any woman who complains. But if you were to be more specific, technically it's racial in nature. So it's more racial than low income or blue collarist, you know what I mean? Like, so, you know, a seemingly overly privileged person who might not be, but a white female, so forth and so on. So who flips out on people who might have provoked her anyway. So anyway, just putting it out there. Alright, moving right along. It's too funny, a little Muppet song. So, speaking of, we're in Philadelphia, so the best Muppet show on earth. It ain't easy being green. Rainbow Connection, the lovers the dreamers and me. Oh, da, 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 da. Serpico Dreams, thanks. So anyway, Chris's Jazz Cafe. Speaking of Chris, or you know, I don't really know that many people named Chris, although I have an aunt who's really, her name isn't Chris, but that's the abbreviation, so we've called her that. Salt Lake City, Utah. I just saw a Utah car in front of the Resurrection Church next to my apartment building, and I thought of the guy from the Mob Crew. His name is Chris, and he lives in Salt Lake City. So, seemingly West Valley-ish. For some reason, I have West Valley City on him, which is interesting because in a time period of extreme desperation, I actually was convinced to go out and get to be trained for CDL Class A, thinking I could drive a truck. I was really desperate. I was in Florida, and it's like whatever I experienced, which began in 2011, got to be so bad that I couldn't figure out how to earn a living, basically. So it's like they kept recruiting for truck driving through CR England. Wound up over Christmas 2019 going out there for CDL Class A. I actually passed the test, driving, written, and the pre-test that you have to take in order to get into the school, which I think it's pretty rigorous. I think it's pretty hard. And on top of that, people who write the tests aren't excellent grammarists. So technically there are questions that are incorrectly written, and if you're really smart, you know that the answers could be about 5 options, but they don't know that. So we'll just leave it. It's DMV, it's the government, it's trucking, you know. So there are people who fail that test and they shouldn't have to retake it 50 million times at a cost every single time they have to retake it. Wink, 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 you see? So I guess that's a point. But anyway, wound up with that, CDL Class A. Then the pandemic started. Also, there were no female trainers, and it was hard to find a trainer who was non-smoking and female. And I will say this just from experience, never ever decide to get a CDL Class A. So I know they go to, you know, sort of hurting neighborhoods and stuff, the Bronx, Brooklyn. They have a lot of people from Brooklyn. But anyway, and some people can find a way up and out of their upbringings, which can feel like a trap. Brooklyn feels like a trap unless you have a lot of money. If you don't have a lot of money, it can feel like you're stuck there forever, and you know what I mean? How do you get off this island already, you know? They're on the other side. I mean, Brooklyn is across the bridge. They're on a bigger piece of land, if you will. But anyway, still, nonetheless, how do you get out of Brooklyn? CDL Class A could be one option, but it's very difficult, and it can feel like you're in a prison because you have to bunk up in a dorm room that's like with all these women who are like bruisers and everything. So it's, you know, just saying. But interestingly enough, I walked all around West Valley City, Salt Lake City, Utah, and I thought it was interesting that I found this Mob Crew guy online. I'm like, you know, he seems to be in the vicinity where I walked around a lot trying to figure out what I should do. So, so anyway, here we are.